Well, good morning, everybody. As we start off today, I just want to give you a quick rundown. We're going to first talk about Beryl and what's left of Beryl as it gets into the Bay of Campeche and the Gulf of Mexico, where it'll end up in the United States, specifically with its moisture. We'll then cover the update of the 5 models that we normally do. We'll look out there into week 2 as far as we can, and then try to assess the extent of the heat wave that's going in the West and when that might possibly break down. At the end of this, I'm going to primarily just focus on some international weather. We're going to look a lot at what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, and we'll just kind of wrap this up with the new European weeklies. But I'll kind of save a more in-depth, longer-range outlook for when I return home and have a proper internet connection. Plus, we do get the new seasonal update from the European model tonight, so we'll include that in Monday's report. All right, so this is Beryl this morning. So the sun rose over the top of Beryl's cloud field here, and it did migrate a bit farther to the north. It is just south of Cancun, where we had landfall last night. And as we watch where Beryl could move, we'd have plenty of favorable ocean temperatures here in the Bay of Campeche and in the Gulf of Mexico. And so we'll just kind of keep an eye on where this could eventually make it into possibly right along the U.S.-Mexico border here in Texas. And while it's not expected to make a huge jump back up in intensity, given overall less than favorable wind shear conditions for this to really just rapidly intensify, getting this back up to a stronger Cat 1 hurricane is possible. Now, what I've been most curious about is where's the moisture from Beryl going to go? Because our outlook here from the National Hurricane Center produced by Tomer shows us a 5-day look. So this is 120 hours out. It should be somewhere here in south central Texas. I just want to be clear that we're talking about, the remnants of our hurricane. This is, this is just looking at where we're expecting the center of the track of that low to go. But we need to discuss how strong it'll be. We can also look at this with just the blend of models. So we have 4 different models here. This is the European models ensemble, the UK Met office. This is the GFS ensemble and the CMC. And again, what we're going to be really trying to figure out is how much of this moisture gets through Texas into Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, into Kentucky, Tennessee, maybe the Ohio River Valley, and possibly even farther. And again, this is just looking at where the moisture from Beryl is expected to go. What's helping this all along is this broader trough that's living here in the upper Midwest that's going to help pull Beryl off in this direction, and the stronger trades behind it pushing it toward the U.S.-Mexico border. But just to be clear, Beryl is not expected to rapidly intensify as it approaches the coastline, and most of the forecast models, if you can kind of see the color shading in the background here, suggest that over the next 5 days we do get a brief intensification before landfall, about 3 days from 2.5 days or so from now, and then of course it'll decrease in strength pretty quickly as it moves into Texas. But this will be the big question I'll have is how far do we take this moisture from Beryl inland? This is just the 7-day outlook from the European model. It's a precipitation anomaly figure. And what's so important about this to me is that for months, my biggest concern has been about ridging in this area, just dominating and bringing in excessive heat and drought conditions. And we always knew that wild card could be the tropics. Other parts of this finally getting a little bit of a break in the moisture in parts of the upper Midwest, northern plains, Canadian prairie, which desperately needs it, and also throughout parts of like the ice states into the Ohio Valley. Now, while we'll watch some of that moisture get into this area, once this kind of moves out, we could look at a few more days of drier weather, and you'll see in a few moments when I put this into the context of both the most recent precip ranks and the drought monitor, how important this will be to get some drier weather in here. A big wild card for me will be parts of the Carolinas into Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, this region in through here that has gone over so very, very dry. We need to see if the pattern really is conducive to delivering moisture to some of these areas. So that's where we're going with this video. Let's get into some other satellite data. Now, this was last night, just kind of taking a look at the deeper low that spun up here in the almost kind of on the Iowa Minnesota border into Wisconsin. And I don't know if you can hear some of the raindrops hitting my truck this morning while I'm recording, but we're still on the northern edge of this. I got one more day on vacation, then we'll be heading home. And I'll be looking forward to the fiber internet connection. But some deeper convection all along that frontal boundary to the south. We've seen that a lot this particular year. And you can see the northern cloud shield of Beryl there. But as we got into the almost sunset last night, a couple of things to take note of here. Look at the wildfires in the west. In fact, I zoomed in a bit on those just to see them a bit better. We can see here in parts of Utah, wildfire smoke throughout parts of California. And then here, kind of on the leeward side of the Cascades, there was a fire yesterday. We can see where some of that smoke is going. And I did pull up the newest all hazards weather map just to assess what kind of risks we continue to keep in this area. And overlaid here are several excessive heat watches and warnings and advisories. But we'll have to be also concerned about the air quality in this area as well. There is an air quality alert throughout this region too. So the other place around the country where we're still dealing with a lot of heat is down here in the south and southeast, and all the way up here into parts of the Carolinas and Virginia, where we're going to be anxious to see if this pattern will deliver rain to this area. Meanwhile, look at all the flood watches and warnings. In fact, let's go bring up the Mississippi River, because this has now made it all the way down here to the southern tip of Illinois. And if we just bring up Mississippi, hopefully I can load this relatively quickly here. There we go. And we'll just kind of get an eye. So it's started to make a bit of a turn, but if we just go to water.noaa.gov, this will at least show us the newest updates for the river gauges. I should have this pulled up before I started recording, but let's have a quick look at this. Yeah, wow. So I'm going to take off some of these that are... There we go. Now we can see those that are in flood. And again, this is just from all of the rain that has been hitting this area for quite some time. So that's a good, just quick update on kind of river status in this area, something we've been watching all week as these rivers are beginning to crest in these areas. All right, let's go back to here, smoke out west. This is just a 48-hour forecast of where we're expecting wildfire smoke to kind of penetrate through the atmosphere. And you can see some coming out of northern Canada, getting into parts of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And then most of our wildfires we're monitoring in the west here, just kind of getting a glimpse as to where their smoke is going. But the pattern is really going to be dominated in the near term by this ridge. So whenever you kind of see this flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere doing something like this, that is a whole lot of meridional flow versus west-east. I say that a lot, but it's really what's going on right now. Our main polar branch of the jet stream is way up here, which is not unexpected, but it is a bit farther to the north. But we also have kind of another piece of it farther to the south, and so there is cooler air that's coming into this area. And it's going to be this trough. In fact, it's going to be this little wave right here that's going to help what's left of Beryl kind of make its turn in a few days going in this direction. Other than that, we do have this feature that's just off the coast here. There is a low in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, and we'll watch this as well for potentially increasing the chances for some precipitation east. So there it is. So using the artificial intelligence forecast, we see that this trough is going to live for a while because of how meridional, things are here in the, the North Pacific, just more north-south flow. And that's going to help the permanence of the ridge in the west. But can you see how Beryl gets pulled in? Watch right down here. Beryl gets pulled into this trough and then taken over the Ohio Valley. And at that point, by next Friday, we already opened up a ridge over the Great Basin, which is where we're expecting our greatest heat risk going into this time period. And what's really interesting about this pattern is by the middle of the month, what you don't see here is the forecast systems dropping deep troughs into the midsection of the United States, for example, or over the Great Lakes, like they've been doing for weeks on end. And we just questioning when that might return. And it's way out there in the forecast. But, the models are not necessarily, giving up on this pattern of keeping the jet here. What I want to know is just where the ridge ends up kind of rocking back and forth to the south, or does it stay into the west? And that'll be a question we're going to have to just watch unfold as we approach the middle of this month. So get back to the near term today. Marginal risk of some stronger storms here, eastern Great Lakes, down to this side of the Ohio River Valley, back in New Mexico. Tomorrow, we're going to watch parts of Nebraska and Kansas, which have already been hit pretty hard in the last week or so with heavy rains and strong storms. And this will be on the 7th, Kansas, Oklahoma. Lightning strikes. This is early this morning. I want to play for you a loop if I can get this to load fast enough here. There we go. This is just a look at the last 24 hours. And so we always, meteorologists, we like to just look for the natural fireworks on the 4th of July, which I hope you all had a safe 4th of July. But, man, there was a lot of strikes. At any given time here, there were 30 to 50,000 strikes per hour moving across just this section of North America. And pretty big storms just yesterday. So early this morning, we can just see what's left of this. So there's a low that's curling up here. over Wisconsin and the UP, the front that's draped to the south of it. I think we had a pretty good initialization on the model this morning for that one. So as we play forward with the high-res NAM, again, we're going to keep an eye out on some stronger storm potential here this evening. Also watch out for scattered storms farther to the south. And then on the back side of this, there's still plenty of upper level support for showers in this area of the central part of the United States. Same thing for parts of the Northeast. As we work our way into Saturday morning, Saturday midday, and Saturday evening, watch again for the storms to pop right in through this area and along the Gulf Coast. This is where the frontal boundary will linger from the system that is today over Wisconsin and Minnesota, Wisconsin and the UP and Michigan. And then as we work our way into Sunday, this will get us out there at about midday on Sunday. The models continue to try to drop some sort of mesoscale convective system into, this section of the country, which is part of the reason why the Storm Prediction Center is keeping an eye on this on Sunday. So I just want you to stay aware of it as well. We'll just need to be watching that over the weekend. What's important about this rainfall that's coming up in this forecast we're going to discuss here is that since the beginning of June all the way through the 4th of July, these are our precipitation ranks by climate district. And if you kind of look at it, it really mimics what we've now seen in the new drought monitor, right? Where we've been so dry, kind of this corridor, parts of the Mid-South, getting into Oklahoma. Remember how dry it's been here while storms have kind of lived along the periphery. That is where we've seen some degradation in the drought monitor here. You can also see what's going on up the East Coast, all the way from Florida and Georgia clear to southern Pennsylvania into New Jersey. And while there have been scattered storms that have come into this area, widespread drought relief hasn't really been around. Parts of the Northwest still very dry, as you can see here. Like, look at this pocket of the Snake River Valley getting over to this side of Wyoming. Northern California, this is now the driest June and early July on record in this area, which is why we're continuing to see, some of the wildfire threat. Now remember, this is the dry season anyway, but just compared to historical numbers, that's where we are. And here we have our wettest region in the country compared to average, stretching again from parts of South Dakota through northern Iowa, Minnesota, into Wisconsin. So I'll give you one more look at that drought monitor updated yesterday. And again, reflecting where the last month the driest conditions have kind of pushed in. But as we look at the forward-looking forecast, this is the next 7 days from the AIFS. And it's got the moisture from Beryl coming right into this region. So this is going to be hitting some drier areas and possibly delivering some pretty heavy precip. If we just take a quicker, kind of more close-up look at where the heaviest rainfall is expected to be, the artificial intelligence forecast system is putting down a good 6 to 8 inches of rain in this area, but a larger swath of 3 to 4 inches right in through here. And we'll take a look at the ensemble averages in a moment to see if they agree. Here's the newest update from the WPC. And while it is not so aggressive on where the rainfall ends up here, we can see pretty strong agreement with the heaviest rains in this part of Texas. This will be important to watch. This whole area needs this rain badly. And it's not just here in the NBM. It was also in the AIFS. And you can see it in the WPC as well. So we're going to watch for this, where this is coming from when we do the model analysis in a second. To complete this, though, this is the latest from the European. That's a 7-day outlook from the European model. And here is a 7-day outlook from the 6E GFS. All right. So if we compare the GFS to the European, it is just important to note there are pretty sizable differences in the models. For example, look how much wetter the GFS is. These are these colors here, in this whole area. And then the European, which is wetter in these colors, is wetter on the back side of all of this. So it's just important to note those small differences are going to be huge for some areas. So these are the regions where when you look at your, if you're using some app, you're going to be really disappointed in its forecasting if they're only using a single model or a single API call or, not actually giving you, all of the models so you can compare them. That's what I try to do with agweather.com. And we actually just built and released to a testing group our own app internally at Nutrien. I can't wait to show it to you. But anyways, I just wanted to show you this is the frustrating part of forecasting. These minute differences can be huge to the individual user. So let's go ahead and look at the models. GFS left, European right. We're going to play this through the day on Saturday where we've already watched the high-res models. And we're going to get out there to Sunday. Now that frontal boundary that's parked into this area could deliver much needed rain to places, not everywhere, but places that need it here in the southeast up to the Carolinas. On the backside, though, you see here storms in the Central Plains. There's better chances of rain in the upper Midwest again. And then as we get into Monday and Tuesday, take note of where the models have, let's go Monday night here, where the models have Beryl. So the European way down here, slower, the GFS much faster, farther interior parts of Texas. And then as we get out there, this is next Wednesday into Thursday. The models are trying to drag that moisture farther into the Ohio Valley. Now, the European being the slower solution, takes a bit longer to get it in there. The GFS being the faster solution over here on the left, it's got that moisture coming in sooner. But what I note in all of this is that over several days, I'm just going to rock back and forth between next Tuesday to Friday. Next Tuesday to Friday, there is better and better chances of getting moisture into parts of the southeast up to the Carolinas and mid-Atlantic. And that is desperately needed. So if we put it all together and look at some ensemble probabilities, over the next week, what are the chances of grabbing an inch? That's what's shown here. As we play this out farther, let's just take it out to 10 days if I can get it to load. There we go. These are some high probabilities of getting more than an inch. It's kind of bullseyed Wisconsin, and then it's stretching right here for the best chances of getting some of that heavier precipitation. If we step this up to 2 inches, this is the probability, there we go, of getting 2 inches. And we'll look for the really heavy rainfall at 4 right in through here. But again, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a few places in here that get 6 to 8 inches of rainfall out of what's left of Beryl. All right, here's the other part of this. The CPC released yesterday that from the 12th through the 18th, which we just kind of looked at, they've increased the risk of heavy precipitation here while keeping the southwest monsoon really going. And so we'll need to watch these two areas carefully. If we take a look at the week 2 forecast, now this is really interesting. The CPC versus the European and the GFS. Look how wet the European is here, and that's in a good agreement with the CPC. But the European does not have that really wet outlook for parts of the southwest. And one of the big reasons for that is where they're expecting the ridge to go in the European model. It's opening up and flattening out here rather than staying sharply defined in this area, pulling that moisture in. But drier in the Canadian prairie, drier in the Midwest, drier, not dry, but drier through these areas. Be a lot of areas that need to see this kind of dry out a bit. I mean, just given how wet things have been as of late. On the temperature side of this discussion, the heat that's coming into the West, California's had it for a while. But the Pacific Northwest heat, getting into British Columbia, this is not the way things have been for most of the last 30 days. We're behind on heat, and we are way behind throughout the Canadian prairie on this heat. Now, across the south, into the southeast and up the east coast, no. We've been plenty warm over the last 30 days. In fact, quite excessive at times in terms of heat. But this is the contrast that's been driving that flow right there. I mean, that's a meteorology 101 type map. If you want to teach new students how to understand jet stream behavior, teach them first about how the lower atmospheric temperature gradient works, because that will be your greatest clue on figuring out how it's going to move. So if we take a look at today's high temperatures, this absolute scorcher, this is what's prompted all of the excessive heat watches and warnings across the West. We're 15 to some places 30 degrees warmer than normal. Whereas in the midsection of the country, where that trough just lives, man, we've just dropped these temperatures down here. Along the Gulf Coast and up the East Coast, it's a hot one. This is Saturday, getting into Sunday. And Monday, you're going to watch this beginning to cool off here. Watch as we get into Tuesday. This is all cloud cover from Beryl. But take a look at that. Remaining hot all the way through midweek next week. The end of next week, that's next Thursday. This excessive heat coming into the western United States, all based on the permanence of that ridge. So no surprise in the day 5 through 10, some of the models are picking up on a 5-day stretch of having temperatures 10 to 20 degrees warmer than average here. And then day 10 through 15, we still see this in this region. Now, there's not going to be a lot of folks, I think, across the Canadian prairie complaining that the heat's coming back on. But this is this is heat. This is hot in this area for a while. And the European model reflects it. As I play this out, that's all the way out to day 10 through 15. That's a lot of just excessive heat going up the West Coast. Yesterday, the CPC also just issued excessive high heat risk on the 12th. And a broader area here from the 12th to the 15th that needs to be concerned with the risk of these very hot temperatures just continuing. All right, so that gets us out 2 weeks and gets us an idea. And again, I'll be building a new longer range story as I get home and get access to a few more tools where I'm no longer tethering from my phone and running off to Walmart to record. But just want to give you some ideas that I'm thinking about here. From the beginning of May all the way to the beginning of, of July, what have we had? We've had this. Okay. Bermuda high's been living here. So we've had this really strong flow coming into this area. Because remember, around a high we go like this, around a low we come through like this. And what's been interesting about Europe is that we've taken a large ridge up into Scandinavia and brought in flow from the north into, this side of the Black Sea, Ukraine, into this part of Russia. And it's had to come around like this. And so if we're going to think about what could change, I would have to say that the high pressure cells I'm watching most carefully are this one and this one, and how that will eventually influence the Scandinavian ridge that keeps repeating in the deep trough that has been living in this part of Russia, because it's been that flow pattern, if this will reload for me, that's kept this large section of Ukraine into southern Russia with NDVI values that are near the lowest they've been. So take a look back into April and May. We had really good NDVI values that just plummeted in June. And this is a large area. Remember earlier this week, I think it was this week, I showed you, there's 2 Iowas worth of land here. So we would roughly say, 60 million acres? That's how big this area is. And those NDVI values are so low. And then you look out in the forecast, and this again, there's the Black Sea, that's that part of Ukraine, just a lot of heat pouring into this area. Much of, Eastern Europe, very, very hot right now. In the meantime, just something else to point out before I come back to this. Look how cold we are now in winter here down in Argentina, moving up toward through, Paraguay into Bolivia and then hitting southern Brazil. So just something else to take note of here. But on the precip side of this, again, very dry in this area. And where that front lives, very wet in southern Brazil. This is uncharacteristic rain for this time of year. So take a look at this global precip map, because the last map I want to show you is the newest European weeklies, which are going to go from mid-July to mid-August. And we've talked a lot about this triple ridge setup around North America. I'm going to come back to that after the weekend. What I'm curious about is, have the models actually picked up on the proper pattern here, going all the way to mid-August, finding the dryness. And while I am expecting just a short lull in the hurricane activity, a lot of Saharan dust, we do have upper level suppression in this area. There's no reason to think that it's going to not just kick back up again in a few weeks. So we'll be watching all of that carefully. But with that, I'm going to stop here. Tell you all have a great weekend, and we'll pick this up next Monday. Thanks.